Thank you for tuning in to the Look Up Podcast. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. We don't take your time lightly. And thanks for being a part of the Look Up Pod fam. Let's jump into the episode.
Welcome back to the Look Up Podcast. It is your host, Roman Downing, with his lovely co-host, second in command, right-hand woman.
I'm first in command. First off, let's start with that. Anywho, it's Alani Downing.
Yeah, by the way.
Welcome back to our regularly scheduled monthly episodes.
Right. At this point, they're pretty much monthly, but
so much has happened. A lot is, I feel like I say this every time, so maybe I should stop leaning with that and just go into it of what's happened.
What's happened?
Life's happened.
It's a lot of life.
A lot of life.
That's
a lot
for sure.
of tribulation. A lot of trials.
Yep.
A lot of joy.
Yeah.
A lot of happy things.
Yeah.
We added a new family member. Her name
We
is
sure did. Oh my goodness. I can't even believe since the last time we recorded, we got a new dog.
A lot's happened. I know.
Yeah.
So we have a new pup. Her name is Lulu. She's a little cocker spaniel, I think. She looks like one.
She looks like a cocker spaniel. I don't know. She might be a chihuahua.
That's a joke.
Works at Craigslist.
No.
We call her a chihuahua.
She's little, but she has like the cocker spaniel face, so it's like it's cute. She's a cutie girl. She's a sweet girl. I'm just happy because our other dog, as you guys know, our third co-host, Audie, she is getting used to her now. It actually likes her a little.
A little bit. It's a little bit, a little by little.
Little by little.
The first day, not so much.
No,
It was like World War II.
attacking. Don't get near me. Don't get near my mom. Don't get near my dad.
Yeah,
Don't touch
don't
anything.
jump on anything. Don't
Stay
touch
in
my
that
toys. Stay in that crate. Right. And then now sometimes they'll take naps together. No.
And then sometimes they chase each other and like have fun and run around. But
So it takes time.
it does.
Right.
We think
Good
that's like
things
with
take time.
anything, right? Good things take time. And it's not always what it
It's
may
true.
seem in the beginning.
Right.
Just because something may start off
A certain
rough
way.
and
Right.
really hard and very like feelings. Do you feel unwelcome? Do you feel unloved? Do you feel
Right.
like you
Right.
do not belong? Does not mean it will always
It'll stay that way.
And I feel like that's kind of how I feel now that I'm talking about it, in some situations in my life,
Right.
like our marriage,
Right. Isn't that crazy how everything
in
kind of
our business venture.
ties into each other?
When I first started out with yoga, or like when I first started doing cycling, like I didn't feel like it was the right thing I should be doing. Like, I mean, there are some things in life where it's like an instant, oh yeah, this is
Right away, you
amazing
just know.
connection.
Right.
And then there's some things where it's like, it's a little rough in the beginning. Like,
Right.
I take that back. Cycling was instant connection, but yoga for me,
That was interesting. Yeah,
hard.
cycling was interesting. But
that one was a toughie, but it's like, it didn't always stay that way. I mean, here I am a year and a half later of being
right.
that,
And there was
different.
points, even I would say, in your cycling journey where you just kind of got a little disillusioned. And
You're right. Where I wanted to stop, where I was like, I want to
Stop.
quit. I don't want to do this
I'm
anymore.
not loving it anymore.
Yeah.
But what do you think that is? Why does that happen?
I feel like we get to a point where it's like we start like having that expectation. And I think it's like, that quote, it's like, well, I don't know what the quote is, but basically if you expect too much or like try not to expect anything, you always end up in like disappointment or like
Yeah,
something like along
the
those
gap
lines.
between expectations and reality is disappointment.
Ooh, maybe that is it.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
That space that's in between what you expected and versus what you got.
Right. And I think it's like I know I'm guilty of like going into a lot of situations where like I'm expecting it to be this way.
Right. Right.
Or like, for example, like in a class, like maybe I was expecting, a class to feel a certain way, like when I got out and like I didn't feel that way. Or like while I'm writing, I was expecting to feel a certain way. Or like,
Right.
I think it's just sometimes it's like we kind of give a lot of responsibility to a lot of external things in our life that cannot fulfill what
Right.
we're actually looking for. And I think that
You're
that's
looking
what leads to a
externally
lot
for
of
something
disappointment.
that's an internal problem.
Right. Or just a problem that like can't be fixed by yourself and you need to pass it off to a higher power.
Or maybe you're searching for a moment that to happen again, but no moment happens twice.
True.
Right.
That is true. No moment will ever happen again exactly how it happened before.
Every moment is unique.
That's a good
Right.
point.
So
I love
like
that.
there's like no point in trying to search for a feeling that you felt before, because you'll never feel that ever again in that moment. Even if, like, say in this situation, it's a cycling class, same music, same ride, same instructor, started at the same time, it's still going to feel a little bit different because there's going to be something different about it.
Something different every time. My legs will not move exactly the way it moved the last
before.
class, you
There
know?
might be someone else that's sitting behind you or to the right of you,
Yeah.
or maybe the AC is broken or something like that.
Something, everything, all of these external factors will always come into play so that it'll never be exactly the same.
Right.
I mean, like, I know, like, you kind of experienced some of those things too with, like, making music, where it was like you clicked with it. Like, it was something that you, like, I mean, obviously I saw you put in a lot of effort in learning how to use a certain,
Right.
tool things
Right.
and like
Right.
figuring out how things work together, or like watching videos and stuff like that. And then there were moments, where it's like it's clicking, and then there was times where you're like, I don't want to make a song for like a week.
And
So
that's okay.
what do you feel like that is for you too? Yeah, I mean, like, I know we're kind of talking about.
Well, I'm
me,
reading the Motivation Manifesto, which is a book that I've been trying to read for probably since you met me. And I'm finally reading. It's not an easy read. You have to focus.
I feel like
you have to
only
focus.
take like a paragraph at a time.
And that's
before
what I've
you're
been
just like,
doing.
What did I read?
That's what I've been doing. So I've been reading like each section.
Section. Yeah.
You know how like it'll have like a title, and then it'll go, and then it'll have another title. So I've been doing that, and it's been really good. And it was just talking about motivation and how motivation is really something it's not like this magical moment that happens. It's really just you focusing on your goal, your end goal, or your why. And whenever you lose motivation is when you've either at one point stopped looking at your goal, or you never were looking at your goal. And that is the reason why your motivation is kind of fleeting, because you're not constantly focusing in on what you are trying to achieve from the work that you're doing, right? And what he's basically saying, and I agree with this, I can look back in a lot of moments, like say the music thing, where in the beginning it's so clear, right? You know exactly what you
And you're so excited.
You're so excited.
Yeah.
And he says it's actually not excitement. It's just that when you first start things, you just have such a clear vision of what you want to happen when you first start something. That expectation, right? You have that
you haven't faced anything yet.
You haven't faced anything, right? You haven't done the reality.
You just have an expectation of like, if I put
haven't
this
done the reality
together,
it'll make right. Like I'm gonna be the next Timbaland, or I'm gonna be the next, Metro Boomin. Like you have that expectation. Like that's where I want to be. That's what, and I have an ear for music. You know what I mean, and all this stuff. And then he says, once you get going, you lose sight of I was going to be the next Timbaland, or I was going to be the next Metro Boomin, and you stop focusing on that, and that's why the motivation goes. And it's true. Like on the music thing, why I stopped for like a month and was making like a beat every week or something like that, is because I stopped thinking and focusing about what I was doing it for in the first place and what the goal was in the beginning. And now I'm back. Now I'm making a beat every day again, and I feel like everything's just kind of clicking and coming together, because I have it's a clear vision again now. Like, okay, let's do the beats. Let's tie it in with the podcast. Let's be consistent with that, because I know where I want the podcast to go. I know where I want the music to go with the podcast tied into it. And when it's clear, you have and I get it now, because like we hear that all the time. Like when you have a definite purpose or a definite why, that's when you'll start, your life will start coming together. And it's true though. It's actually true though, is that when you know exactly what you want, the actions behind what you need to do every day starts becoming easy.
Yeah.
It comes together. It becomes easy. And like LeBron, like for example, like LeBron James is the greatest player of all time. If he wins another championship, there's no argument. But it's that when he was a kid, he knew he wanted to be the greatest ever. There was like no like, oh, I might be an engineer too. No, like he was like always going to be a basketball player. So showing up at the gym every day and getting reps in and shooting and practicing and learning plays, that wasn't a struggle for him because he knew for a fact that's what he wanted to do. So that's what the book's kind of just like keying in on. And I'm starting to get it and understand it now, is that like, and I learned this a lot from you actually, is that for you in your job per se, like you like to knock everything out like right away. And I was thinking about this yesterday. I don't know why this stuck with me when you told me about this yesterday, is that how you just get everything done right away. And I was just like, that's interesting. Cause like when I was working in sales, I would do a little bit, take a break.
We would work the full day.
Do a little bit, take another break, maybe take 2 hours, do a little bit, and then work pretty much all the way until 3 o'clock because I've just been taking like scattered breaks. And you made a really good point. It's just like, why are you, prolonging the process when you can just knock everything out right then and there and do what you need to do right then and there so you can be done at noon?
And also, so it doesn't like mess with your mind. Like your mind will never get that time to like fully focus on something. Like I also can think about it as you were talking, it just reminded me of like when I was putting this house together and like the interior designs of everything.
Needed to get everything done.
I had it to get it right away. Like the house was pretty much fully decorated by week two. Like
by that following Monday.
I installed all the things I needed to install. Yeah. And like it was just, instead of like prolonging it and like waiting things. Yeah. And it's like I feel better. Like my mind feels more at peace knowing that things are done. And like I remember when I was like hanging these curtains or just trying to drill things in these walls, and I'm like, it was like hurting to have to carry all these things. So I was like doing a lot of it like, on my own and stuff because I wanted it done. But I just was like so focused on like how it would look that I didn't care. Like I was like not sleeping like during the first 2 weeks. I was like shopping around for things. I was,
drilling things into the wall
building all these furniture pieces,
drilling into studs by hand with a screwdriver. With a screwdriver.
Because I just wanted it.
I said, "Do you want to buy a drill?" She's like, "No, I need to finish this now."
Literally, I was like obsessed with like the end result.
Right.
I feel like that's the same thing with like what you were saying, like in my job or like in anything. It's like when you're like just obsessed with that end result, you'll just get it done faster.
Right.
But then it also, kind of goes back to like, well, how bad do you like want it to be done?
Right.
Because that's going to help.
Sometimes we want it really bad. We want it done we want it done bad. Right. Like most of us, we want to be successful. Like we want our lives to look like we envision it and picture it. But I think sometimes we just get distracted.
That's the thing. Yeah. We take too many breaks.
We take too many breaks. Because like, I deserve it.
Maybe we're just not pacing ourselves right. Because it's when it comes to like this big game of life, sometimes it's like we work so hard at the beginning that we burn ourselves out and all we want to do is rest. Because I think we've both been in that position.
Yep.
Or on the latter hand, it's like we like don't ever put in enough work, or we stop before like when we're doing work and it's like, it's getting kind of hard, then we stop.
Then we go back.
We never like push past that extra step. Like in cycling, like when or maybe it's yoga. One of the two. I've had an instructor, one of them say.
Probably both.
It's like, you just have, once you like get to that point of like it's in yoga. Your legs are shaking, like you're holding a pose for a really long time and you're breaking. She's like, if you just take one more breath, it's like you've just pushed past your limit and you just told your mind and you told yourself that you can do hard things, that you can go past that. And it's like you only get stronger and you only get better if you just hold it for like a little bit longer. And she's like, even if you fall out, come back immediately and like hold it for another breath and then keep holding it for another breath. And it's like that
prove to yourself.
You prove to yourself. And that kind of like can come back into like everyday life where it's like, this is really hard, but just come back for another breath or just try it for another, another breath, another day, like before you even think in your mind, like you have to give up, because your mind will tell you like you need to give up.
Your mind will right. And that's why and then your body is like, fine, actually. If you actually check in on your body, you're just like, I'm actually not that tired, but my mind is tired. And that's the battle. That's the battle that I struggle with in cycling for sure. And I think that it can pour over into other parts of your life too. And that's why I think we talked about this before. We have talked about this before, that mind-body connection where, it has to be synced. It has to be together. It has to be one so that that like you can tell your mind sometime to shut up and just listen to your body, or you could tell your body to shut up and listen to your mind, because sometimes your body will be like, your mind will be like, nah, but I feel good though.
Exactly. And I think that kind of like a lot of it too is like the mind has an expectation of how it's supposed to feel. And then when it's like worse than it feels,
Right.
it's like,
it's like, oh, hell no. Yeah, right.
I need to stop. Because you're like, okay, I know it's going to be hard. Like, we're pretty logical-ish. We're more emotional beings. But we have some logic where it's like, okay, I know if I, like, do this, it's going to be kind of hard. Like, I have an idea. Like, I know lifting weights is not going to be easy.
Right. You're going to be sore.
And I'm going to be sore. But you don't fully know the extent of it until you're, like, in it. And then that expectation, and that's is what I feel like, causes us to like that motivation,
that gap,
and like then we kind of stop. So
right,
it's interesting.
I think it's 100% true, and I think that's the reason why motivation is the way that it is, man. It's crazy, but it's simple at the same time. Motivation is really, if you really think about it in that way, that Brendon Burchard, who's the author of Motivation Manifesto, the way he explains it, it's actually pretty straightforward. And when you think about it, you're just like, yeah, like that's actually true. That actually makes a whole ton of sense. So that's really what the main thing that I've been learning, because I've just been diving back into reading and listening to podcasts again, and just, tying my life back together or up or whatever. I don't know what you want to call it, but just some really good stuff. And I've been listening to a lot of Diary of a CEO, and learning about just a lot of these people's lives. It's just been like really eye-opening. I was listening to Seth Rogen's to Diary of a CEO with Seth Rogen on it. And I think a lot of the times we think that people's lives are this big dramatic and traumatic story. But I think a lot of people can become successful just living normal lives and just being normal people and having like a good upbringing and having good parents and just being a regular person. Like, you don't need to have this big, massive story of overcoming. You just need to have a clear vision. And he talked about this, Seth Rogen did, is just like, when I was 12, like I was pretty logical about my life. I was like, I'm going to do stand-up so I can maybe get on a sitcom and write movies. And he was 12 years old when he said this. And that was what he wanted to do. And he did it. He went on and did it. And the first movie that he wrote was Superbad, with his best friend that he met when he was 7 years old, who also loved movies. So they wrote that together, and then they've just been making movies ever since. And then like the host is just like, well, what was your parents' relationship with money? Like, what happened to you? What is comedy? Is comedy like a trap? And he's just like, no, none of that. Like, I just really love movies and I love doing this. And I just knew when I was 12 years old that this is what I wanted to do in my life. And I think that's what has been able to help Seth Rogen, like going back on that motivation piece, stay motivated and stay consistent in the path to where he's at right now. Like, were there ups and downs? Yeah. Like, he's been booed off stage plenty of times and he's had unsuccessful movies, but he's kept in his mind that this is the life that I want and this is how I want to live it. So I think it's pretty cool. Just knowing that if you just stay on top of it, you're good. But then there's that other side of the coin where there is trauma. Like, there was this other doctor that was on his podcast, and he was just talking about like how trauma is you have to free yourself from trauma. Like, it's almost a form of bondage.
It is, yeah.
Right. And he quoted Pinocchio. He said, how foolish I was when I was a puppet. Right. And he talked about trauma being the strings that hold you and attach you. And Pinocchio knew he was a puppet, but he was always trying to convince himself that he was a real boy.
Right.
Right. And I think trauma can do that. Like, we know we have these things in our past that are like holding us back and that are controlling us, but we want to convince ourselves that we got over that and it's not hurting us anymore, and that we are freed from it.
Right.
When in the back of our mind, we know I'm still a puppet. I'm not a real boy yet. And how you go back and on that trauma is that you just have to, like when we were in therapy, like just going back on those moments that it's just like, where is this coming from? Like, why do I feel this way? And sometimes you'll need that third party to come in, like Chrissy did for us, and unveil some of these past hurts and traumas that'll help heal you, and making sure you sever them all the way. Otherwise they'll creep back up.
I think you also made a good point, though. It's like having that third party, but also like the power of like the prayers that we prayed together. And like, so like having a community almost of people praying for you.
Right.
Is I feel like game changing, because it's like the way that she prayed was so different than how like I was growing up, like how I heard prayer from like a Christian school that I went to, or like,
Right.
you know,
It's different.
it's very different. She was praying like as if she was like talking to him, as if he was there, and how she was just saying like as if he was like a doctor, you know, like giving him all the issues and like he could solve it. Like she would say like, God, like you know, someone they're struggling with, and she'd list them out like this, and this, like walk them through that. Like they can't handle it on their own. Like it's too much. And like she was voicing all the things that I think we were thinking.
Right.
But I just felt like coming to him or coming to God in prayer meant like having to ask for specific things. Like in prayers I've heard growing up, like it's like, God, I ask for strength, I ask for guidance, I ask for peace.
These like really grandiose.
So yeah, it's almost like it was worded so beautifully. It was like a
like a poem.
Like a lot of prayers. And then when I was listening to her talk, it was just like we were just talking, and I was like venting to her of like things that are going on, and she's telling God that, and it's like she's just venting to him for us. You know what I mean? And that I feel like was a big game changer, because I feel like that just helped one frame, like in my eyes, like what he can do and how he knows us. And then two, I felt like that helped me learn of like what that saying means of like, cast all your burdens onto me, you know, book of, I think that's Psalms. I'm not sure, but it's like, what that means, like, because there's a lot of these like traumas that like we're talking about that it's like I can't handle it on my own. You can't help me. Sometimes a therapist alone can't help me.
Right.
But having like obviously the community here that like he's given us on earth, but also just realizing that like if we were to give it all to him, he can heal all of it, you know. But
what happened if you gave that problem to the creator of the universe?
And I also think there's another thing too, because I remember like thinking like, okay, if I give him all my problems, it's gonna go away that minute. Like me saying it, like in a church service where they're like, raise your hand if you're going through something, and then like you raise your hand and you're like, everyone's praying for you, and you're like, okay, it's gone. But it's like then you walk out of the church doors and like the problem's still there, or you're still feeling those emotions. And I think that's what I've had to learn is that casting all your burdens onto God doesn't mean it goes away right that minute, but it means he's working, and it also allows, it's like you allowed your heart to be opened to whatever he may be looking to bring in to heal that or to take it away. You know what I mean? I feel like that's how I see it anyway.
And things have to happen. Things have to line up, and other things have to happen first before your miracle happens, or before your prayer is, you know, is seen. Well, it's seen and heard right away.
Yeah.
But before your prayer is performed, right? And just being patient in those moments that like obstacles are going to be a real thing. Like they just happen. But you can still pray on those in order for them to get removed, right? Like Nehemiah, when they were building the castle, and you know, he's building the castle with one hand, and then he's fighting off his enemies with the left hand. Like, of course, Nehemiah's praying that, like, okay, God, please, you know, let this attack, relent, please. You know what I mean? Like, eventually it did, but you also still may need to fight off that obstacle in the meantime while he's working.
Because I feel like that's also like him working like in
you, right? Right. Instead of an exterior thing
being like removed.
Right. Maybe he's working in you, and the prayer is actually being fulfilled, and the promise is actually being fulfilled within you by giving you the strength, by giving you the ability, by giving you everything that you need to get past this moment. Maybe it's not going to go away right away. Maybe the cancer is not going to go away right away. Maybe the marital strife ain't going to go away right away. But just keep in mind, maybe he's making you stronger so you can withstand that marriage. Maybe he's making you stronger so you can outlast the cancer. Maybe he's making you stronger. Maybe the prayer did work right away. You just haven't seen it yet.
Right. In the way that you wanted
to see it. Maybe he's working in you and you can't even see it yet. And the prayer is already answered. The promise is already fulfilled in you. And you didn't even know it yet.
Right.
Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't be here.
And I think it's like our brains are just too small to understand and comprehend a lot of these things. So it's like there's just we're so limited in our perspective and in our view. And yeah, I feel like that's where we can tend to feel like we missed the miracle, or that we never got the miracle, or like our prayer never got answered, but it was never missed. It was there. And that's another thing. I forgot what I'm reading. Oh, I think it was in a devotional. I don't know. I read it somewhere. But basically, it was just saying, it's like, when you pray, it's like, also pray that, like, oh, maybe you told me this, that you can see him working.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, God, like, show me that you're working. Like, I want to see that, or like open my eyes. And then he said, when you're like out living,
Paul says, be watchful.
Yes, to look and to like, to like see, like, you know what I'm saying?
He there. You're just not looking. Be watchful while you out there today.
Like pay attention.
Make it a game almost, you know what I mean?
He could be showing up through a person. He could be showing up through nature. He could be showing up through, you know, through like a random thought that you just came across your mind that you're like, that's weird. You know what I mean? Like it could show up in so many different ways. You're just not looking, because we're so, like I was saying, our perspectives are so limited, and it's like we tend to only focus on
individuals,
on individual things, and like, you know, ourselves,
caught up in our own world, caught up in our own life, and you're just, you know, completely blinded by you. You're in your own way, right? So it's true. It's very true. Look for the things, look for God in your daily life, and he'll reveal itself, that's for sure. So that was a good talk.
That was a great talk. But thank you guys for tuning in. You already know. Psalms 121, verse 1 through 3.
You already know, baby.
You already know. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. Let us know if you like want to hear any conversations of like things that maybe like you're talking about, or like you're thinking about. Like, you can always DM us on Instagram. But we appreciate you guys. We love you guys. We hope you have a great day, a great week, and
we'll see you next week.
Next one. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you guys for tuning into the Look Up Podcast. We appreciate you for spending whatever it may have been for you, your breakfast, your drive into work, your lunch break, or even some time right before bed. We drop an episode every single Tuesday, so we look forward to hanging out with you guys next week. Remember, hold on to this, that when times get tough, look up to the mountains, because where does your help come from? Your help comes from the maker of heaven and earth. We'll see you guys next week.